The Zaxarian Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace in a dazzling display of synchronized precision. Their crystalline ships caught the light of Earth's sun, refracting it into prismatic cascades that would have impressed even the most jaded space traveler. Admiral Cthulhu stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Radiance, her iridescent scales shifting colors with barely contained excitement. Finally, after centuries of searching, they have found them. A pre-spaceflight civilization on the edges of explored space. The humans, as they called themselves, had barely managed to establish a few research outposts on their lunar satellite. Their primitive radio signals still used electromagnetic waves. For creator's sake, magnify the Earth observation station, Thera ordered, her secondary eyes focusing on the holographic display while her primary set remained fixed on the blue-green planet below. The image zoomed in on what the Zaxarians had designated as Human Scientific Outpost Alpha, a crude cylindrical structure rotating slowly in low Earth orbit. Its solar panels looked like they had been cobbled together from primitive photovoltaic cells, and its hull appeared to be made of basic titanium alloys. "It's almost adorable," her first officer, Tilara, commented, "like looking at ancient pictures of our own first steps into space." Cthulhu nodded sagely. The Zaxarian Empire had spent millennia uplifting promising species, guiding them toward their full potential. It was their sacred duty, passed down through generations. Open a communication channel. Let's give them their first contact with an advanced civilization. The human station's external cameras detected the Zaxarian fleet long before they attempted communication. Inside the station's central control room, Dr. Sarah Chen was enjoying her morning tea, her legs folded underneath her in zero gravity as she reviewed data from the station's quantum field experiments. "Doctor," the station's AI, ARIA, spoke with a hint of amusement in her voice. "We have visitors, rather flashy ones at that." Sarah glanced at the feed showing the crystalline ships. "Oh, the Zaxarians finally made it. Took them long enough. I was starting to think we'd have to accidentally leak our position to them. They're attempting to initiate communication using standard electromagnetic frequencies," Araya reported. "Should I maintain our low-tech facade?" Sarah grinned, taking another sip of her tea. "Of course. Operation Humble Beginnings remains in effect. Let's see what they have to say." The communication came through in perfectly translated English, thanks to the Zaxarians' supposedly advanced universal translator. The irony that humans had mastered telepathic communication centuries ago wasn't lost on Sarah. "Greetings, primitive but promising humans." The alien voice resonated through the station speakers. "I am Admiral Cthulhu of the Zaxarian Empire, here to offer you the greatest gift any species can receive: guidance toward technological advancement and membership in our galactic community." Sarah managed to keep a straight face, though several of her crew members had to mute their comms to hide their laughter. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth Orbital Research Station. We are honored by your presence, mighty advanced beings." She threw in a slight tremor in her voice for good measure. "Do not be frightened," Cthulhu responded benevolently. "We have studied your civilization and determined you are ready for first contact. Your achievement of basic spaceflight, while primitive, shows promise." Behind Sarah, her chief engineer, Dr. James Rodriguez, was stuffed his fist in his mouth to keep from laughing out loud. Their basic spaceflight capabilities included faster-than-light travel developed 3 centuries ago, and the station itself contained technology that would make the Zaxarian ships look like stone tools in comparison. "We are humbled by your assessment," Sarah managed to say. "Though I must ask, our instruments show your ships are powered by quantum fusion. Is that not dangerous?" She knew perfectly well that the Zaxarians used a safe, if prehistoric, form of quantum fusion, but maintaining their cover required playing the concerned primitive. Admiral Cthulhu's voice swelled with pride. "Fear not, young ones. Our containment technology is far beyond your comprehension. The energy signature you detect is merely a fraction of our ship's true power." Sarah nodded seriously while typing a message to her crew. Nobody mentioned the zero-point energy reactor in the coffee maker. We would be honored, Sarah continued out loud, if you would share some of your advanced knowledge with us. Though I worry our primitive minds might struggle to comprehend such wonders. She was laying it on thick now, but the Zaxarians seemed to be eating it up. Your humility does you credit, Dr. Chen, Cthulhu replied. Perhaps we could start with something simple, like showing you how to improve your crude life support systems. The ones you're using must be terribly inefficient. Sarah glanced at the station's environmental system status, a seamless blend of biological and technological components that maintained perfect conditions while actually improving the health of its occupants. Oh yes, we struggle constantly with maintaining adequate oxygen levels. She waved her hand through the air that was probably cleaner than anything the Zaxarians had ever breathed. We would be happy to send over some of our engineers to begin the upgrade process, Cthulhu offered magnanimously. That would be. Sarah was interrupted by an alert from Araya, transmitted directly to her neural implant. Doctor, I should mention that the Zaxarians are attempting to scan the station. Their technology is having trouble penetrating even our basic outer hull shielding. Should I let them see something interesting? Sarah vocalized her response. Show them the hydroponic garden and maybe a glimpse of the waste recycling system. Nothing too exciting. Out loud, she continued, that would be most generous, Admiral. Though I should warn you, our docking systems are very basic. We wouldn't want to damage your advanced ships. Our vessels have universal docking capabilities, Cthulhu assured her. Your primitive architecture poses no challenge to our engineering. As if on cue, Araya announced privately to Sarah. They're sending over technical specifications for their docking procedure. Should I tell them that their universal system is incompatible with our quantum-locked airlocks? No, Sarah thought back. Just reconfigure the outer docking ring to match their specs, and make sure the visiting areas are properly camouflaged. We don't want them stumbling into the Quantum Computation Center or the Temporal Research Lab. Already done, Araya confirmed. I've also activated the holograms to make everything look appropriately primitive. Though I did leave the coffee maker as is, I doubt they'll recognize zero-point energy technology when they see it. The next few hours were an exercise in restraint as Sarah and her crew watched the Zaxarian engineering team explore their station with patronizing amazement. The aliens marveled at the crude but functional designs, offered suggestions for improving efficiency by at least 40%, which would actually reduce the station's efficiency by several orders of magnitude, and generally acted like parents praising a child's first crayon drawing. Your life support system uses photosynthetic organisms for oxygen generation, one Zaxarian engineer exclaimed, examining the hydroponic garden. How charmingly primitive. We haven't used biological systems in centuries. Sarah nodded seriously, not mentioning that the simple plants were actually complex biological technological hybrids that could terraform a planet in weeks. We do what we can with our limited understanding. The tour concluded with the Zaxarian team providing a data packet of basic technological improvements that humanity might be able to comprehend. Sarah accepted it with appropriate reverence, privately noting that most of the technology it contained had been obsolete on Earth before humans had even reached their moon. As the Zaxarian engineers prepared to return to their ship, Sarah couldn't resist one small indulgence. Would any of you care for coffee before you go? It's a traditional Earth beverage. The aliens accepted graciously, probably expecting some primitive brewed stimulant. None of them noticed that the coffee maker briefly warped space-time to age the beans to perfection, or that the water had been quantum filtered to achieve optimal molecular structure. This is remarkable, one engineer admitted, scales shifting to a pleased purple hue. Such complex flavors from such a simple preparation method. We do our best, Sarah said modestly, though I'm sure it's nothing compared to the beverages you have in the Empire. After the Zaxarians departed, Sarah's crew finally allowed themselves to laugh freely. Did you see their faces when they tried to scan the hull? Rodriguez chuckled. Their sensors probably think we're using reinforced aluminum instead of quantum-entangled metamaterials. How long do you think we need to keep up this charade? Sarah asked Araya. According to current diplomatic protocols, we should maintain the facade for at least 6 more months. The AI replied. This gives the Zaxxarians time to feel properly superior and protective, making the eventual revelation of humanity's true capabilities more impactful for their cultural development. Sarah nodded, finishing her perfectly prepared coffee. Well then, I suppose we should start working on looking suitably impressed by their advanced technology. Araya, make a note. Tomorrow, we should probably struggle with something simple, like artificial gravity. Noted, Araya replied. Though I suggest we keep the coffee maker as is. Some things are too important to compromise. The Zaxxarian fleet hung in orbit, their crystalline ships still catching the sunlight in impressive displays, completely unaware that they were being studied by sensors far beyond their comprehension. The humans had perfected the art of playing primitive long ago, knowing that some species needed to feel superior before they could accept their place in the true order of the galaxy. Sarah looked out at the eternal radiance and smiled. The Zaxxarians would learn eventually, just as all species did. But for now, she had reports to file, using electromagnetic waves. Of course, wouldn't want to frighten their new friends with anything too advanced. 2 weeks after first contact, the Zaxxarian Empire's most prestigious diplomatic vessel, the Crystal Mandate, arrived at Earth's orbit. Unlike the military ships, this one was designed to impress developing species with its artistic beauty rather than military might. Its crystalline surfaces were carved with the history of 1,000 successful upliftings, each telling the story of how the Zaxxarians had guided another primitive species to greatness. Ambassador Celera stood in her preparation chamber, her scales shifting through calming patterns of blue and gold. Review the human briefing again, she commanded her eye assistant. Humans, free FTL species, recently achieved basic spaceflight capabilities. Notable achievements include crewed orbital stations and primitive lunar outposts. Technology level. Early industrial space age. Current assessment. Highly promising due to rapid developmental pace and unusual problem-solving capabilities. The humans had requested that this diplomatic meeting take place at their United Nations building in New York. How charmingly primitive, insisting on a ground-based facility. Still, the Zaxxarians were nothing if not accommodating to developing species. Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's junior diplomatic attaché, and actually the head of the Department of Interspecies Cultural Development, waited on the UN building's roof with his team. They had carefully redecorated the building to look appropriately primitive, hiding the quantum architecture and biotech interfaces under clever holograms. Remember everyone, he briefed his team. We're playing the part of an emerging species. Look impressed by their technology, but not too impressed. We want them to feel helpful without becoming suspicious. The Zaxxarian shuttle descended from the Crystal Mandate with theatrical grace, its crystalline surface refracting sunlight in carefully calculated patterns. As it landed, Marcus had to admit they had style, even if it was a bit overwrought. Ambassador Selvera emerged like a vision from ancient mythology, her scales creating mesmerizing patterns of light. The human delegation gasped appropriately, though privately Marcus was comparing her bioluminescence to the far more sophisticated displays common at children's parties back home. Greetings, promising children of Earth, Celera announced, her universal translator converting her words into perfect English. We come to begin your journey toward galactic citizenship. Marcus bowed deeply, hiding his smile. Most honored ambassador, we are humbled by your presence. Though I fear our primitive facility may not be suitable for one of your advanced status. Fear not, Celera replied magnanimously. We are well accustomed to working with developing species. Our environmental fields will compensate for any inadequacies in your life support systems. Marcus noted with amusement that their primitive air was actually several orders of magnitude cleaner than the Zaxxarian environmental field, thanks to the building's quantum filtration system. But that would be impolite to mention. The diplomatic session began in the UN's main chamber, which had been carefully dressed down to look like it relied on 20th century technology. The human delegates made sure to take notes with physical tablets and styluses, despite the fact that most of them were carrying enough computing power in their neural implants to run a small planet. "We have reviewed your current technological level," Selhera began, projecting a holographic display that the humans politely pretended was impressive. "With our guidance, we believe we can accelerate your development by at least 3 centuries. 3 centuries. Amazing!" Marcus exclaimed, not mentioning that the technology she was describing had been obsolete on Earth for over 500 years. The presentation continued, with the Zaxxarians outlining their planned technological sharing program. They showed designs for fusion reactors, cute, quantum communication systems, admirably primitive, and artificial gravity generators, practically antiques. During a break, Marcus's assistant, Dr. Linda Chen, approached him with a concerned look. "Sir, the Zaxxarians are attempting to scan the building with their advanced sensors. Should we let them find anything interesting?" Marcus considered for a moment. "Show them some basic fiber optics and maybe a quantum computer in its early stages of development. Make it look like we're just starting to experiment with quantum mechanics." The afternoon session focused on cultural exchange. The Zaxxarians shared stories of their Great Enlightenment period, carefully edited to maintain their image as benevolent guides to primitive species. The humans shared their own history, carefully edited to look less advanced than it was. "And this is how we achieve faster-than-light travel," Selhera explained, showing another hologram. "Though, of course, such technology is centuries beyond your current capabilities." Marcus watched the demonstration with appropriate wonder, while mentally noting that the Zaxxarian FTL system still relied on brute force dimensional manipulation. Humans had moved beyond such crude methods generations ago, now traveling between stars through elegant quantum probability manipulation. "It's like magic to us," he said truthfully, though not for the reasons Selhera assumed. The day's negotiations concluded with a formal dinner, where the humans served carefully selected primitive foods. The Zaxxarians were particularly impressed by something as simple as ice cream, having no idea that its molecular structure had been quantum optimized for perfect texture and flavor release. "Your species shows remarkable potential," Selhera commented over dessert. "With proper guidance, you might achieve basic interstellar travel within just a few generations." "We can only hope to learn from your wisdom," Marcus replied, discreetly using his neural implant to suppress a laugh. As the Zaxxarian delegation prepared to return to their ship, Selhera presented Marcus with a gift, a basic quantum computer that she assured him would revolutionize human computing capabilities. Marcus accepted it with appropriate reverence, planning to add it to the growing collection of alien technology in the Museum of Historical Computing back in New Singapore. Later that night, after the Zaxxarians had departed, Marcus met with his team to review the day's progress. "They're exactly as the cultural development models predicted," he noted, completely convinced of their own superiority, but with the potential for growth once they move past it. "How long do we maintain the charade?" Linda asked. "A few more months at least," Marcus replied. "We need them to fully commit to their role as our mentors before we can begin the gradual revelation process. It's kinder that way, less shocking to their cultural psyche, and more entertaining for us," someone added from the back of the room. Marcus smiled. "That too. Though remember, we were all primitive once. The Zaxxarians just need time to realize that their role in the galaxy might not be quite what they imagined." As the crystal mandate orbited above, its crew congratulating themselves on a successful first diplomatic contact, none of them noticed the quantum fluctuations that indicated human ships passing nearby, or the subtle signs that Earth's technology was far beyond their comprehension. Some lessons, after all, were best learned slowly. "Would you like me to continue with Part 3? After a month of diplomatic exchanges, the Zaxxarian High Council had grown increasingly frustrated. Despite their best efforts to guide humanity, the primitive species seem to be advancing at an inexplicably slow pace. Even worse, some of their improvements to human technology appeared to have no effect at all. High Commander Vextor stood before the council, his scales rippling with agitation. These humans are peculiar. When we upgraded their orbital station's life support systems, the efficiency readings barely changed. It's as if the systems are resistant to improvement. Perhaps, suggested Council Elder Niera, her ancient scales shimmering with wisdom, we should demonstrate our superiority more directly. Challenge them to prove their worth. The Council agreed unanimously. The humans would face 3 tests of technological advancement. Surely this would both prove Zaxxarian superiority and motivate the primitives to accept their guidance more readily. On Earth, the Interstellar Relations Committee met in their primitive conference room, which was actually a quantum-linked space that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's chief representative, received the Zaxxarian challenge with carefully concealed amusement. They want us to participate in a technology demonstration competition, she announced to the committee. 3 challenges: energy generation, computational processing, and space travel. Should we lose deliberately? Asked Dr. Rodriguez, who had been enjoying his role as the simple engineer far too much. No, Sarah replied, studying the challenge parameters. We'll win, but we'll win in a way that makes them think we just got lucky. Araya, what are the parameters for appropriate technological demonstration? The AS response echoed through their neural networks. Suggest displaying technology approximately 100 years more advanced than their current assessment of us. This will surprise them without revealing our true capabilities. The first challenge was set for the following week. The Zaxxarians requested that both species demonstrate their most advanced energy generation system. They'd brought their pride and joy, a 4th-generation quantum fusion reactor that could power a small city. The human team arrived with what appeared to be a modified solar panel array. Dr. Rodriguez had spent hours making the zero-point energy collector look appropriately crude, even adding some unnecessary wiring for effect. Begin your demonstration, High Commander Vextor announced proudly, activating their reactor. It hummed to life, creating an impressive display of contained plasma and generating enough power to run their entire fleet. The humans activated their solar array. Immediately, it began producing 5 times the energy of the Zaxxarian reactor, despite its apparent simplicity. The Zaxxarian scientists rushed to their sensors, scales flickering in confusion. Impossible, one muttered. They're using some form of zero-point energy extraction, but the technology looks barely beyond industrial level. It must be an accident. They couldn't possibly understand the principles involved. Sarah maintained a look of innocent surprise. Is something wrong? We just thought if we arranged the panels in a Fibonacci sequence and added some quantum focusing crystals. She trailed off, noting with satisfaction how the Zaxxarian scientists were frantically taking notes. The second challenge involved computational processing. The Zaxxarians brought out their most advanced quantum computer, capable of calculations that would take a traditional computer millions of years. The humans presented what appeared to be a modified laptop. We call it the Quantum Personal Computer Beta, Dr. Chen explained, patting the deliberately clunky-looking device. It's just a hobby project, really. When the processing challenge began, the human device not only matched the Zaxxarian computer, but exceeded its capabilities by an order of magnitude. The Zaxxarian scientists were beside themselves. They must have accidentally discovered a more efficient form of quantum entanglement, one insisted. There's no way they designed this intentionally. The final challenge was space travel. The Zaxxarians demonstrated their latest FTL drive, capable of crossing a light year in just under a day. The humans revealed what they called an experimental drive system attached to a small probe. When activated, the human probe disappeared and reappeared at its target destination instantly, leaving the Zaxxarian sensors struggling to detect how it had moved at all. The human team made a show of being surprised by their success. "Oh my!" Sarah exclaimed. "We weren't sure if the quantum probability manipulation would work at that scale. How fortunate." The Zaxxarian High Council met in emergency session that evening. Their careful plans for uplifting humanity had been thrown into chaos. The humans had displayed technology that should have been centuries beyond their capability, yet they seemed almost unaware of their achievements. Could they be receiving help from another advanced species? One council member suggested. "Impossible," another replied. "We monitor all known advanced civilizations. There's no evidence of interference." "Perhaps," Elder Neera said thoughtfully, "we should consider the possibility that we don't fully understand these humans." Meanwhile, in the supposedly primitive human facility, Sarah's team was celebrating their successful demonstrations. "Did you see their faces when the probe teleported?" Rodriguez laughed. "I thought their scales would fall off." "We may have shown them a bit too much," Sarah mused. "Araya, what's your assessment?" "The Zaxxarians are currently rewriting their entire assessment of human capabilities," the AI reported. "However, they still believe your advances are largely accidental. Their cultural paradigm makes it difficult for them to accept that a primitive species could have intentionally developed such technology." "Perfect," Sarah smiled. "That gives us time to prepare them for the next phase." "Speaking of which, is the quantum coffee maker still confusing their sensors?" "They've developed 17 different theories about how it works," Araya confirmed. "None of them are correct, but several are quite creative." The challenges had served their purpose, planting the first seeds of doubt in the Zaxxarian worldview. Soon, they would be ready for the truth, or at least as much of the truth as they could handle. Above Earth, the Crystal Mandate's sensors continued their constant scans, still failing to detect the vast network of quantum infrastructure that surrounded the planet, or the true nature of human technology. Some revelations, after all, required perfect timing. "Would you like me to continue with Part 4? The Zaxxarian High Council was in crisis. After 3 months of attempting to mentor humanity, their carefully constructed worldview was crumbling. Their primitive students had demonstrated inexplicable technological capabilities, yet continued to act as if they needed guidance. Something had to give. Elder Neera, in an unprecedented move, requested a private meeting with Earth's representatives. The humans, sensing the time was right, agreed to host her at what they called their primary research facility in Antarctica. Dr. Sarah Chen greeted the ancient Zaxxarian at the facility's entrance, which appeared to be a simple research station nestled in the ice. "Welcome, Elder. We're honored by your presence." Neera's scales shifted thoughtfully as she studied the building. "Dr. Chen, I must be direct. My species prides itself on uplifting others. But your people puzzle us. I request complete honesty about your capabilities." Sarah smiled. "We were wondering when this conversation would come." Arara, disengage the holograms. All of them. The simple research station shimmered and transformed. The true facility emerged, a vast complex that extended not just across the ice, but deep beneath it, its architecture defying conventional physics. Quantum energy patterns danced across surfaces that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Neera's scales went completely white, the Zaxxarian equivalent of shocked speechlessness. "Welcome," Sarah said gently, "to the Earth Quantum Research Institute. This is just one of our smaller facilities." The tour that followed shattered every preconception the Zaxxarians had about humanity. Sarah showed Neera laboratories where scientists manipulated the fundamental forces of reality, engineering bays where ships were grown rather than built, and computational centers that made their most advanced quantum computers look like primitive calculators. "That device," Neera pointed to what appeared to be a small sphere floating in one lab. "What does it do?" "Oh, that's a teaching tool for children," Sarah explained. "It helps them visualize 11-dimensional space. Would you like to see our actual research equipment? In the temporal mechanics lab, Nayera watched human scientists casually manipulating time fields for various experiments. How long have you been capable of this? Time is relative, Sarah replied with a smile. But by your calendar, we achieved this level of technology about 5 centuries ago, though we've made some improvements since then. They passed through a doorway that briefly shifted them through several parallel dimensions before returning them to their original reality. Nayera barely noticed, too overwhelmed by each new revelation. Your species, she finally managed to ask, why did you pretend to be primitive? Why maintain this deception? Sarah led them to a comfortable observation lounge that overlooked the Antarctic expanse. Would you like some coffee? The quantum maker here is actually fully operational, unlike the simplified one we showed your engineers. As Nayera sipped the perfectly prepared beverage, Sarah explained, we've found that advanced species generally fall into 2 categories when encountering those they believe to be primitive. They either exploit them or, like the Zaxxarians, try to uplift them. Both approaches usually end badly. So we developed the gradual revelation protocol. She continued, we let species discover our true capabilities slowly in a way that doesn't shatter their cultural identity. We found it leads to much more stable long-term relationships. How many other species, Nayera began, are like us, currently active in this galaxy? More than you might think. Many of those primitive civilizations you've been guiding are actually quite advanced. They're just better at hiding it than we are. The elder's scales cycled through various colors as she processed this information. Our entire mission of uplifting others is not invalid, Sarah assured her. Just perhaps not as necessary as you thought. Many species do need guidance, but perhaps it's time for the Zaxxarians to consider that they might sometimes need guidance too. Why reveal this to me now? Because your species is ready. Your reaction to our accidental advances showed curiosity rather than fear or anger. That's rare, and it's exactly what we were hoping for. Nayera sat in contemplative silence for a long moment. Our council will need to be informed carefully. This will change everything. We have extensive experience in helping species adjust to these revelations, Sarah explained. We'll help you every step of the way. The real question is, are you ready to join the actual galactic community? As if to emphasize her point, a ship materialized outside the window, not through conventional space travel, but by simply shifting probability until it existed there. It was clearly more advanced than anything the Zaxxarians had ever seen, yet it had an elegant simplicity to its design. That's one of our educational vessels, Sarah noted casually. Would you like a tour of our actual fleet? Nayera's scales shifted to a color Sarah had never seen before, one that indicated both terror and excitement. Perhaps we should finish our coffee first. Take all the time you need, Sarah replied kindly. After all, we've had centuries of practice at waiting. Would you like me to continue with the final part? 1 year after the revelation of humanity's true capabilities, the Zaxxarian Empire was undergoing its greatest transformation in centuries. The Crystal Mandate, once a symbol of their role as galactic mentors, had been rebuilt with human assistance into something far more humble, a vessel of cultural exchange and mutual learning. Ambassador Celera, now serving as the head of the newly formed Department of Interspecies Relations, stood before the High Council chambers. The traditional crystalline walls had been enhanced with quantum architecture, a gift from their human students who had become their most patient teachers. The integration program proceeds better than expected, she reported, her scales showing patterns of optimism. 90% of our population has accepted the new reality, and applications to human universities have exceeded all projections. Elder Nayera, who had become the primary advocate for this cultural transformation, nodded approvingly. And how are our former protectorates responding? Most have revealed their true technological levels, Celera replied, trying not to wince at the memory of how many advanced civilizations they had patronized. Some are nearly as advanced as humanity. Others are genuinely developing species who still appreciate our guidance, though we've significantly revised our approach. In Earth's Antarctic facility, Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed the latest reports with satisfaction. The Zaxarians had surprised everyone with their adaptability. Rather than retreating into denial or responding with hostility, they had embraced their new understanding of the galaxy with remarkable grace. "Aria," she called out, "show me the current status of Project New Dawn." The AI projected a complex multidimensional display showing the Zaxarian civilization's development curves. They've achieved a 47% reduction in cultural superiority indicators while maintaining their core values of assistance and advancement. Their technical adaptation rate is particularly impressive. Sarah smiled as she watched a feed from the first joint human-Zaxarian research facility. Scientists from both species work together, their different approaches to physics and technology, creating innovations that neither would have discovered alone. They've even started making improvements to our designs, she noted with pride. That quantum crystal hybrid propulsion system they developed last month is quite elegant. The facility's door probability shifted open, admitting High Commander Vextor, now serving as the liaison between Zaxarian and human scientific communities. His scales showed the iridescent patterns of someone still amazed by everyday human technology. "Dr. Chen," he greeted her, his former condescension replaced with genuine respect. "We've completed the preliminary tests on the quantum consciousness transfer system. The results are unexpected." "Let me guess," Sarah replied. "You found a way to improve its efficiency using crystalline quantum matrices." "Indeed. Your people approach quantum mechanics through mathematics and probability. We see it through crystalline structures and harmonic resonance. Together," he gestured to the successful test results. "Together we achieve more than either could alone." Sarah finished. "That's why we maintain the gradual revelation protocol. Genuine partnerships can only be built on mutual respect." In orbit above Earth, the former Imperial flagship Eternal Radiance, now transformed into a joint scientific vessel, prepared for its first mission of true exploration. Its crew was a mix of humans and Zaxarians, all eager to push the boundaries of known space. Captain Linda Chen, formerly Sarah's assistant, and now the first human to command a hybrid crew, stood on the bridge. The ship's quantum crystal hybrid systems hummed with power that would have seemed impossible to the Zaxarians just a year ago. "Course plotted for the Andromeda Galaxy," her Zaxarian first officer reported. "Quantum probability drives synchronized with crystal harmonic enhancers. We're ready to make history." Linda smiled. "Send a message to both Earth and the High Council. Project New Horizons is go. Let's show the universe what we can achieve together." The ship shifted through quantum space, its new hybrid technology allowing it to cross the intergalactic void faster than either species had managed alone. As they traveled, humans and Zaxarians shared stories, jokes, and most importantly, coffee from the quantum crystal hybrid maker that produced the best brew in two galaxies. Back on Earth, Sarah watched the ship's departure with satisfaction. "Aria, update the gradual revelation protocol archives. Note that the Zaxarian integration has set new records for successful transition." "Noted," the eye replied. "Shall I begin preparing assessment protocols for the next candidate species? The Diraxians have been showing promising signs of readiness." "Not yet," Sarah decided. "Let's give the Zaxarians the opportunity to help guide another species through the revelation process. They've earned it." In the depths of space, countless civilizations continued their careful dance of pretense and revelation, each waiting for the right moment to show their true capabilities. But thanks to humanity's patience and the Zaxarians' willingness to learn, the galaxy had taken one more step toward a future where knowledge was shared openly and advancement came through cooperation rather than competition. And somewhere in the vast expanse between galaxies, a quantum crystal hybrid coffee maker brewed the perfect cup, proving that sometimes the smallest innovations could bridge the greatest divides. The end. Would you like me to provide the SEO-optimized title and description for the complete story now?